Raya and Sakina Ali Hammam, two Egyptian sisters, are among the most famous killers in Egypt. They were famous for forming a gang to lure and kill women for theft between December 1919 and November 1920, which caused panic in the city of Alexandria in Egypt at that time. They immigrated at the beginning of their lives, accompanied by their mother and their older brother, Abu el-Ala, from Upper Egypt to the center of Kafr el-Zayed, and then to the city of Alexandria, and pimping and facilitating secret prostitution, until they ended up luring women and killing them with the aim of seizing their gold jewelry in partnership with Muhammad Abdul Al, Sukaina's husband, who started her life as a prostitute, Saeed Mare, Raya's husband, and two others, Arabi Hassan and Abdul Razik Yusuf. Raya was born in the village of Al-Khala in the Edfu district of Aswan Governorate, in the far reaches of Upper Egypt, in approximately 1875, while Sakina was born in Kafr el-Zayed in approximately 1885. Their father died at a young age, then the family moved to Beni Suef and then to Kafr el-Zayed, where the two sisters were working in collecting cotton. Raya married Hasibullah Saeed Murdi and gave birth to a girl named Badia, and another child who died shortly after his birth. Then Sakina and her new husband moved to Alexandria to live in the Al-Luban neighborhood around 1913, and later her sister Raya joined her with her family. Sakina divorced her husband and married Muhammad Abdul Al, who was their neighbor at the time. And with the crushing economic conditions that the region faced during World War I and the spread of unemployment and poverty, the family turned to illegal work and secret prostitution. Then they began to think of stealing gold jewelry from the women and then burying them in a hidden way without leaving any trace. The gang's activity began when the two sisters used to seduce and deceive the victim with sweet words in order to gain her confidence. Then they would give her strong acting wine that would lead her to drunkenness and intoxication, so she would lose the ability to focus and the strength to resist. And then each member of the gang would take a role in the process of killing the victim by holding her breath. And the accused, Muhammad Abdul Al, was the first to add to the investigation the first details of how the victims were killed and buried, thus denying all that was rumored that the gang was strangling women. As his statements matched the reports of forensic doctors who asserted that the killing was done by holding the breath and not in any other way, and about the distribution of roles among them during the killing process, Muhammad Abdul Al said that his role in most of the operations was to paralyze the victim's feet, while another paralyzed her arms, and the third fixed her head so that the latter could hold her breath with a handkerchief soaked in water until she breathed her last. For the victim to die until they stripped her of her jewelry, gold jewelry, and clothes, then they buried her in the same place where she was killed. The police began to carry out investigations due to reports of the disappearance of women in Alexandria. The beginning was in mid-January 1920, when Mrs. Zainab Hassan, 40 years old, submitted a report to the Alexandria Police Hakamdar about the disappearance of her 25-year-old daughter, Nazla Abu el-Lail. She said that she was adorned with golden ornaments in her hand. The mother's communication ended with her fearing that her daughter might have been killed by someone to steal her gold. They were not reached due to many difficulties and obstacles. The most prominent reasons put forward by some historians and writers were the spread of the phenomenon of women escaping from their families at that time because of poverty or love, which justifies the possibility of a person's disappearance for those reasons and excludes the idea of murder or kidnapping. It is that the women's dress, which was widespread at the time, was the black robe and the face covering, and therefore no one could identify any woman or distinguish between them. The absence of any identity papers at the time, which made it difficult to find the disappeared persons. That the two sisters used to lure women who were previously related to them or could gain their trust, and therefore the victim used to enter the house of her own free will without making any noise or suspicions. The police never suspected that the criminals were women, and therefore the investigations focused on the male suspects, and no one ever thought or doubted that it was a women's gang. Also, the male gang members did not participate in the luring operations, which were rather the specialty of Raya and Sakina only. The gang's activity continued to lure and kill the victims until it reached 17 women, from the investigations until their crimes were discovered by chance. The beginning was on the morning of December 11, 1920, when Yusbashi Ibrahim Hamdi, deputy warden of the frankincense department in Alexandria, received a telephone signal from the patrol soldier on Abbey Street. Al Garda found the corpse of a woman on the public road, and the signs confirms the presence of bone remains and long head hair with the bones of the skull and all the organs of the body separated from each other. Next to the corpse is a veil of black gauze and a black drink with white stripes, and it is not possible to identify the owner of the corpse. Then a visually impaired man, Ahmed Morsi Abdo, submits a report to the constable that while he was digging inside his room to get water in and do some plumbing work, he was surprised to find human bones, so he continued digging until he found the rest of the corpse, which prompted him to report it immediately. By himself, he went to his house, which was not more than 50 meters away from the police station. The young lieutenant saw the corpse with his own eyes, and he became more excited to investigate and research the sensational case. In the end, he discovered that he was in front of a new surprise, that the house was rented by a man named Muhammad Ahmed Al-Samni, and he used to rent out the rooms of the house for his own account. Among those who sublet in the past period were Sakina bint Ali and others, and that Sakina rented the room in which the man found the body under the tiles. The room with all methods and temptations, but the owner of the house refused, which prompted the officer to suspect Sakina because of that. After the appearance of the two unknown bodies, one of the secret informants spread all over Alexandria in search of any news regarding the disappearance of women. This informant, whose name was Ahmed al-Barki, noticed an intense smell of incense emanating from Raya's room on the ground floor of Khadija Hasab's house on Ali Bek al-Kabir Street, and the informant confirmed that the incense smoke was started suspiciously from the window of the room, which aroused his suspicions, so he decided to enter the room, which became very confused when the informant asked her about the secret of this amount of incense. Police officers, informants, and the arrivals to the room. They found a wooden crate used for storage, and the officer orders to evacuate the room and remove the crate. But the officer discovers that the tiles above the floor of the room and under the crate are newly installed, unlike the rest of the room's tiles, so he orders the removal of the tiles. And when they were removed, the smell of mold escalated in a way that no one could bear. Then they were removed the largest amount of tiles, and a woman's corpse appears. Raya panics and her confusion increases, while the officer orders to complete the digging and keep the body until he issues a report of the incident in the police station and took Raya with her. He went to the frankincense department, but he hardly reached the gate of the department until he was notified that the second body had been found. Rather, the force in Raya's room stumbled upon irrefutable and decisive evidence, which is the seal of Hasibullah tied to a circular rope. It seems that Hasibullah was hanging it around his neck and fell from it while burying one of the bodies. Raya could no longer deny it, especially after a new report reached the officer from his men that a third body had been found. Raya is forced to admit that she did not participate in the killing, but there were men who came to the room with women, and that they committed the crimes during her absence, and she identified the two men as Araba and Ahmed al-Jedder. The corpses that were found in Raya's house, then investigations arrived from a son named Muhammad al-Shahat, confirming that Raya was renting another room in Al-Najid neighborhood from Sidi Iskander Street. The police force was quickly transferred to the new address, the two rooms were evacuated, and new bodies were discovered. The officers went to the homes of all the arrested suspects, and Lieutenant Ahmed Abdullah of the investigation force finds jewelry, photos and a bill of exchange worth £120 in the house of the accused, Araba Hassan. Another house in Karmuz, and when digging, a new woman's body was discovered. Raya was the first to decide to confess early, who admitted that she was a naive woman, and that men used to come to her room with women during her absence, then kill the women before she came, and that she only attended one murder. So that, she confessed the facts of luring women to her sister's house and men slaughtering and burying them. While Sakina tells in the rest of her confessions the story of the murder of 17 women and girls, but she confirms that her sister Raya was the one who implicated her the first time in exchange for £3, and after that she was getting her share of each crime without having the objection for fear that her husband Abdul Al and his men would kill her. The case had occupied public opinion in Egypt, and the news of the arrest of the accused had topped the headlines. But the investigations did not pass easily due to the conflicting accounts of the accused, the multiplicity of threats and the lack of sufficient evidence, which may lead to the failure of resolving the case and the perpetrators escaping from justice, until Kamel Bey Aziz, the representative of the deputy, is forced the general in Alexandria apologized for the case after 12 days of investigations to no avail, and it did not reach any compelling evidence against Raya and Sakina. Immediately, the public prosecutor assigned Suleiman Bey Aziz, the deputy public prosecutor and the chief prosecutor of Cairo, to complete the investigation, and he was able to tie the strings of the case and resolve it 3 days after his arrival. Raya's daughter, Badia, was interrogated, and she admitted that she witnessed the crimes, and with her confrontation with Raya, she was forced to confess, and with confronting the defendants with evidence and the confessions of others, they ended up confessing to committing these crimes. The majority of the victims of the gang of Raya and Sakina's men were prostitutes who had previously dealt with the gang members, as most of them worked in the brothels that Raya and Sakina managed secretly, and their number reached 17 women according to the confessions of the gang members. Only 14 of them were identified, and the rest of the bodies were not remembered. None of the defendants named their names, and no one reported their disappearance. That was it for today's story of the first 2 women who were executed by hanging in Egypt. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe for more real unknown stories.